I was just in Chapel. You know, those 3 kids getting killed the way they got killed, you know, obviously, you know, it wasn't over a parking spot, as we know, right? But what made Black Lives Matter so significant was that this was a movement that was based upon state violence upon black people done with impunity. Maybe I'll have to translate that. Killing black people and getting away with it. Ferguson, no charges. Eric Garner, caught on camera, no charges. And this is the story over and over and over again. It's a broken record. Malcolm will talk about police brutality all the time. So it's about state violence and impunity. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. And so I'm asking us to think about our position when we think about what happened in Chapel Hill. Horrible tragedy. 3 young kids killed like that. Of course, we all remember or know about the young Somali brother in Missouri who was killed. No one's talking about that cat. But okay, fair enough. The bigger point to me is it Muslim lives that matter, or is it American Muslim lives that matter to us? Feel me. Feel me on this. I'm only going to talk about Iraq. And I'm only going to talk about the last 12 years. I'm not going to talk about Gaza. I'm not going to talk about Afghanistan. I'm not going to talk about drones in Yemen, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, in other places where the U.S. is using. I'm not going to talk about Libya. I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm just going to talk about Iraq. And only the last 12 years. I'm not going to go pre-9/11 to sanctions. I'm not going to go to state-supported neoliberal policies that starved and impoverished, and then the supporting of dictators that crushed people and killed. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to focus on Iraq, 12 years. 2003 to now. By conservative estimates, the U.S. military killed 500,000 Iraqis in 12 years. Conservative estimates, most conservative. Other estimates range 1.2, 1.3 million. Let's go with the conservative number, 500,000. I did the math. That's 2.5 Iraqis per day. The Malcolm X grassroots movement based and used the statistic of 1 every 28 hours. 1 black person every 28 hours was killed by some official of the state. Well, just in Iraq, it was 1 Iraqi every 10 hours. Where's the outcry from the Muslims? Where are the candlelight vigils for those Iraqis that are killed every 10 hours? That's just Iraq. Like I said, I didn't even take it anywhere else. You want to start counting numbers, you're going to have 2 every hour. Maybe. I don't know the math exactly. Where's the outcry?
And the question was...
Again, is it only American Muslim lives that matter?
It's so boring.
That's state-sanctioned violence done with impunity. The U.S. military is an arm of the state. They come back and get medals. They get college loans. Right? Why don't we see that as an example of state-sanctioned violence done with impunity? We don't understand that? We can't protest that? So as a community, we got a lot of maturing to do. And for our allies who aren't Muslim, who are black, brown, white, red, yellow, They need to understand that U.S. militarism is the flip side of domestic policing. Why don't we see U.S. military violence as the same as domestic policing? Like I said, we can go back centuries to the brutal supporting of dictators, neoliberal policies, the arming of paramilitary groups to massacre people. We can go back, and the number would be horrifying. So when we talk about Muslim Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter, there's a point not to use Black Lives Matter. But there's a deeper point that I think is more important that everybody, Muslim and black and non-black, need to understand about U.S. military violence. Right? Why aren't we up in arms when that happens? It's normalized to us. Again, I'm not undermining what happened in Chapel Hill. Those 3 young kids didn't obviously deserve that. But we get up in arms for that, but every day this happens. Every day that Chapel Hill happens. Right? Again, Malcolm would say make the connection. Right? Any other questions or comments?
Comment, please.
Again? Okay, what's that?
Comment, please.
Any questions? Go ahead. I mean, look, you guys are smart. You know, I don't have to tell you what to do. Read Malcolm, read King, read Angela, read social movement history, see what they did. I'll say this though. If you make Chapel Hill simply about a hate crime, about a lone individual, then you're going to put pressure on the authorities and the legal and the agencies in a particular way. Classify this as a hate crime, try him as this, you know, get some hate crime legislation passed, you know, get a law passed in one of those or all 3 of those kids' names. That's the work you're going to do, right? But if you see it as something broader and more systemic, Iraq, Afghanistan, drones, U.S. wars and interventions as part of the same kind of violence that killed these kids. Now you might start putting pressure on other places. It wouldn't just be classified as a hate crime. You might start putting pressure on the State Department, on the Pentagon, on military recruitment, on the whole war machinery that Dr. King said was going to destroy America. Dr. King said, America doesn't come to grips with its militarism, the epitaph will read Vietnam. So if you think about the problem, sometimes our biggest problem is how we diagnose the problem. If you diagnose it differently, you might come up with a different solution. I'm asking us to expand our political horizon a little bit, how we see and understand the problem, right? We would put pressure on very different kinds of agencies then in order to address that, right? Is that, right? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Delapsai, for that very informative